In a previous video, we witnessed just how congested the Dutch railway network is, and we introduced the 5 shortest distance between stations, some so short that you barely have time to sit down and before you have to get off. But since then, I've been wondering, given that the Netherlands is famous for its dense population, what about the opposite scenario? In this densely packed railway map, just how far apart are two most distant adjacent stations? Spoiler alert, it is very far, at least much farther than I expected. In today's video, we are going to reveal the 5 most distant train stations and uncover whether these gaps are due to terrain limitations, historical factors, or simply planning considerations. However, before we start the ranking, we need to define what adjacent means. This is crucial because compared to the short distance, the scenarios for long distance stations are much more complex. In my view, 2 stations must meet the following 3 strict conditions to be considered adjacent stations. For this list, first, the HSL ZOUD does not count. Why? Because high-speed rail is inherently designed for long-distance travel. It mostly runs on dedicated enclosed tracks. If we include high-speed rail, it will completely defeat the purpose of comparing the traditional railway network. We want to see the limits of conventional rail. Second, if there is a sprinter station between 2 intercity stations, it doesn't count. For example, if an intercity train goes from station A directly to station C without stopping at station B, the station B is physically right next to the tracks, then A and C do not count as physically adjacent. We are looking for the absolute vacuum distance between stations on the tracks, not the stopping distance of specific train types. However, there is a rather special exception. If there is a station managed by a different railway company between 2 stations, but departing from the intermediate station only allows you to reach one side, then the 2 outer stations are still considered adjacent. Using the ABC example again, if a train travels from station A to C, and there is a station B in the middle managed by another company, but boarding at station B only allows you to reach station A or C, but not both through travel, then A and C are still counted as adjacent. Alright, now we clear up these complex but necessary rules, let's get moving. I'm currently at Haren Station, located south of the town of Groningen. This is a quiet area inhabited by many commuters. The next station south on this railway line, Assen, is 21.9 kilometers away. Behind this journey lies an interesting story about urban planning, nature conservation, and historical shifts. Let's look at the starting point. Haren Station first opened in 1870 along with the Stad Line C route, intended to connect the northern metropolis with the southern hinterland. However, fate was unkind. Due to poor initial location selection and a sharp decline in passenger numbers following the Great Depression, the station was forced to close in 1936. For a long time after that, trains merely whistled past, no longer stopping here. The turning point came in the 1960s with the saturation of Groningen city center. Haren developed rapidly thanks to its beautiful environment, becoming a famous suburban area, and the region surrounding the railway line expanded accordingly. To serve these commuters traveling to and from the city daily, the new Haren station opened in 1968, putting it back on the map. To adapt to modern demands, the entire station underwent massive modernization between 2018 and 2019. This wasn't just a patch-up job, it included updates like transparent lifts, widened platforms, and a redesign of the station square. Now, you will find that although it is a small station, the design is very clean and transparent, integrating a huge bicycle parking lot in the square, perfectly embodying the Dutch rail plus bike commuting culture. So why are these 2 stations so far apart? There are 2 main reasons. First, traveling south from Haren to Assen, the train passes through the National Park Drentse A. This place is very special. It is not a closed reserve in the traditional sense, but a well-preserved landscape of primitive streams and heathlands interwoven with ancient rural scenery. To protect this precious natural landscape and biodiversity, the Dutch government strictly limits development here. Large-scale town development is not permitted in the middle, and since there are no new towns, there is naturally no need to establish train stations to disturb the peace. The other point is the population density gap. Haarlem is essentially an extension of the Groningen metropolitan area, while Assen is the capital of Drenthe province. Both ends are population centers. However, the villages in between, like Vries and Tinaro, have very small populations, although local residents hope for a train stop. For the railway company, this passenger volume is not enough to support the cost of frequent intercity or sprinter stops. We have now arrived in Assen. Assen station also opened in 1870 and serves as a vital passenger transport hub, connecting the bus networks of surrounding municipalities. However, with increasing foot traffic, the old station could no longer meet demand, and the old underpass was narrow and dark, cutting the city in half. In 2018, the brand new Assen station was completed, undergoing a complete transformation. The most striking feature of this new station is its massive floating triangular wooden roof. The designer used wood and glass to create a space filled with natural light, eliminating the gloomy feeling of the past. The new underpass is spacious and bright, not only connecting the platforms, but seamlessly linking the city center with the eastern residential areas. This station is now not only a transport node, but has become a modern landmark for Assen as a provincial capital, providing a magnificent first impression for the tens of thousands of fans who flock here annually to watch the MotoGP. This is Tilburg, an industrial heart of the North Brabant province. It is not just a town famous for its university and textile history, it is full of rough, unpolished modern vitality. Our journey departs from here, heading northeast to the next stop, another important city in the North Brabant, 's-Hertogenbosch. Although these two cities belong to the same province, the railway journey between them is quite unique. The distance between the two stations is 22.3 kilometers, and on this long stretch of track, there are absolutely no intermediate stops. Let's look at the starting point first. Tilburg Station's history dates back to 1863, opening alongside Start Line E. In that era, this was once a terminus. However, the futuristic building you see now is the result of later reconstruction. Tilburg Station is most famous for its massive wavy roof. This design has a very cute nickname locally, the Kupuk duck. Furthermore, right next to the station, there is a landmark you absolutely cannot miss, the clock tower shaped like a giant clothespin. On the north side of the station, you can also see the Lockhole Library, converted from an old locomotive maintenance shed. These modern architectural structures, full of steel and glass elements, collectively form the hardcore industrial aesthetic of Tilburg's sport zone. Next, let's turn our gaze to the destination. Compared to Tilburg's industrial avant-garde vibe, 's-Hertogenbosch presents a completely different face. It is a historic, elegant, ancient town serving as a Catholic center. It retains the strong appearance of a medieval fortified city, with canals weaving underground and streets filled with a Burgundian atmosphere of enjoyment. Although the Den Bosch station itself is renovated, the moment you step out, you immediately feel that ancient atmosphere. The famous golden dragon statue in front of the station watches over passing travelers, as if guarding the city. Back to our main topic. Why is there such a long gap between these two stylistically different cities? Is nobody living in the middle? Actually, no. This long blank space is mainly caused by two key factors. First is the historical closure of stations. This route wasn't originally empty. Before the 1950s, there were several small stations between these two stops, including Berkel-Amersfoort, Udenhout, and Helvoort. These stations once saved local villages, but in the 1930s, the Dutch railways closed these low-traffic small stations. This decision directly created this vacuum zone of over 20 kilometers. Although there have been voices in recent years demanding the reopening of Berkel Escort Station due to population growth, as of now, trains still whistle past, leaving only echoes of history. The other reason, once again, is masterpiece of nature, a national park. After the train leaves Tilburg, this railway cuts through the edge of famous Loosen and Duurstendalen National Park. This is no ordinary forest. It is known as the Sahara of Brabant. It is a vast inland dune and forest reserve, featuring shifty sand and landscape rare in Europe. On such a nature reserve and unstable sandy terrain, large-scale urban development or setting up station does not align with the logic of environmental protection and modern planning. Therefore, passengers pass through not the endless residential areas common in the Netherlands, but a green tunnel, dense forests interwoven with open golden sands. The station we are at now is Weert. Geographically, it is the first stop crossing from the North Brabant province into southern Limburg, earning it a very resounding title, the Port van Limburg. But for me, Weert has a special significance. When the train leaves here, the next stop, Roermond, is 24.1 kilometers away, placing it third on our list of longest station distance. Let's pull the camera back to Weert station itself. The existing station building was built in 1914. Have you noticed? This building is very unique. Unlike the common red brick stations in the Netherlands, it is full of heavy brickwork style and unique tower designs. The overall lines are rigid and stable, giving a sense of security like a defensive fortress. Because of its unique historical aesthetic, it is considered a classic of Dutch railway architecture and was even voted one of the most beautiful stations in the Netherlands. Why are these two stations so far apart? Behind this lies a history of railway development changes. The situation is very similar to the section between Tilburg and Den Bosch. In the late 19th century, the site of this 20-plus kilometer track was actually much livelier. Between Weert and Roermond, there were originally several small stations, including Bexham, Heidhausen, and Hallen. That is to say, trains used to stop and go. However, in the 1930s, these stations with lower passenger traffic were closed on a large scale. Although they were briefly reopened during World War II, they eventually disappeared into the dust of history. This great station retreat creating the uninterrupted long-distance sprint we can enjoy today. After speeding for more than 20 kilometers, we finally arrive at the other end, Roermond Station. This station is even older than Weert, first opening in 1865. Although the original classical building was unfortunately damaged, the restoration work was very successful. Roermond is the core transport hub for cultural Limburg. The railway network radiates from here like veins, south directly to the provincial capital Maastricht, east directly across the border into Germany, and north to Venlo. This busy traffic volume allows it to sit firmly as the second busiest station in Limburg province, second only to Maastricht. When visiting the Netherlands, a name on many people's travel bucket list is Giethoorn. To reach this fairy tale water village, if you choose to take the train, you'll usually have to take it to Steenwijk or Meppel station, then transfer to a bus. You might notice something strange. Just before arriving at Meppel, the train goes through an unusually long drive. Do you know why? Because the station before Meppel, Zwolle, is a staggering 27.3 kilometers away. Let's look at the starting point of this journey. Zwolle is not just a place name. It is the capital of Overijssel and the heart of the northeastern Netherlands. It is a vibrant, large-scale transport hub where you can see trains of 3 different colors docking. Because it is opened simultaneously by 3 different companies, NS, Arriva, and Keolis. It is a necessary gateway to the north, and its busyness is evident. At the other end of the railway, Meppel, though much smaller in scale, has a completely different character. It is sometimes called the Little Amsterdam of the North. There are many charming canals intersecting here. Historically, it was an important port for peat transport and the gateway to the Drenthe province. But you might ask, why is the middle a blank space? The reason there are no stations in between is that they were erased. Both Zwolle and Meppel station are part of Stadsline A. This line connecting Arnhem in the south with Leeuwarden in the north. To serve residents along the line, there were actually stops in the middle. Within this erased history, the most fascinating part is a special village situated between the two stations, Staphorst. There used to be a train station here, but it was closed in 1935. Staphorst is not an ordinary Dutch village. It is a famous conservative religious village in the Netherlands. Sunday worship is very prevalent here, and the village church is always packed every Sunday. Since the railway passed right by their doorstep, why not build a station back? There was a hard prerequisite. The Zwolle to Meppel line must open a sprinter service every 15 minutes to qualify for a station. The current situation is very tense. In addition to the local municipal and provincial governments, the operator Arriva also strongly supports the plan, hoping to serve more local residents. However, ProRail, which manages the railway hardware, strongly objects. The selection between Zwolle and Meppel is currently very busy. A bottleneck forcing a station into the middle to stop trains could cause chain reaction delays for all long-distance trains behind. Currently, the national government has allocated 100 million euros to solve the traffic bottleneck near Meppel, but is this huge sum enough to cover the high cost of re-establishing a station in Staphorst? Or will this 27 kilometers of lonely speeding continue for another decade? That remains in question. Honorable mentions. Before we reveal the champion, I want to give some honorable mentions. In the dense railway network of the Netherlands, there are several lines that still have station distance worthy of our highest respect. First, we go to North Holland. The distance from Purmerend to Hoorn is a lengthy 17.9 kilometers. Next, we head south, back to the edge of the Dieppe region. Horst Zevenum to Duren is 18.0 kilometers. Then, we come to the youngest land in the Netherlands, Flevoland. First is Almere Oostwaarders to Lelystad Centrum, a distance of 18.1 kilometers. Continuing east past Lelystad towards Dronten, the distance from Lelystad Centrum to Dronten explodes to 20.6 kilometers. Finally, operated by Arriva, Venray to Blerick is a massive 20.7 kilometers. So, where are the two stations with the longest distance in the Netherlands? The answer is revealed. It is Amersfoort Central and Alpendorf. The distance between these two stations is an astonishing 43.6 kilometers, leaving the other four competitions on our list in the dust. Actually, if your eyes are sharp, you might notice that there is a station called Hoevelaken on the map between these two. However, this station is operated by Keolis. If you get on the train from Amersfoort heading to Alpendorf, the train is not stopping here, and conversely, departing from Hoevelaken cannot get you to Alpendorf. So according to our rule number 3, these two stations are considered adjacent. But even if you take a step back and exclude the 7 kilometers from Amersfoort to Hoevelaken, the remaining distance is still 36.6 kilometers, a figure that still crushes all competitors to sit firmly on the throne. I have already introduced Amersfoort in detail in a previous video. If you're interested, I'll put the link to that video in the description. But to quickly recap, Amersfoort was hailed as the European City of the Year in 2023, and this is by no means an undeserved reputation. It mainly has three charming features. First, the city fuses classical and modern architectures. Second, the city is full of vast green spaces. And finally, it is an important transport hub. Turning the lens to the other side, the other station, Alpendorf, shows a completely different temperament. If Amersfoort is a busy heart, Alpendorf is the elegant back garden. The city is famous for being long favored by the Dutch royal family. This makes the overall atmosphere of Alpendorf more laid-back, aristocratic, and lush with greenery. Additionally, I heard there is a preserved steam tram operated by VSM here, where you can experience a retro feel traveling through the forest. But after checking the schedule, I found that unfortunately, it is not operating season right now, and it's a pity to see the empty platform. But this also gives us a reason to visit again in the future. Next time there's a chance, we must make up for this regret. As for the reason why these two stations are so far apart, there are many too. Do you wanna guess? That's right, the answer is again national parks and vanished history. This route cuts directly through the largest nature reserve in the Netherlands, the Veluwe. There are no cities, no farmland here, only dense forests, rolling sands, and vast heathlands. But it wasn't always this desolate here. In fact, there used to be several small stations scattered along this route, such as Stroe, Kotvijk, and Assel. Now, when you pass by in a train, if you look closely out the window, you might still see traces suddenly widening. That is the proof of these ghost stations once existed. Their disappearance is what achieved the longest railway distance in the Netherlands today. Looking back at these 5 sections, you will find a common point. The existence of these vacuum zones is not just because of long distance. In fact, they are almost all the result of the combined action of nature and history. These long-distance sections exist because we decided not to build there. We choose to preserve nature, or because of historical great retreat of the 1930s, turning some once bustling small stations into ghosts in the forest. This is not just for the efficiency of train operations, but a testament to how the Netherlands, a densely populated country, strikes a balance between high development and nature preservation. So which way of traveling do you prefer? Is it the efficient commuting like the Randstad, stopping every few minutes, or this kind of long-distance ring where you can stare at the forest outside the window in a daze for 15 to 20 minutes? If you have more thoughts, feel free to discuss them in the comment section. That's all for today, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.